Hello guitar enthusiasts, it is I, Steve Rempus, the Guitar Nut, here to waste 20 some odd minutes of your time, or enlighten and educate you. You make the call. Pardon me. First off, it's been a little while. I recently put out, finally, the Sterling Stingray SR50 review that I'd promised. It took me 2 times to film that thing to finally get it presentable. And I'm sure some would argue that it still wasn't presentable. I'm working on figuring out how to do this whole sound thing and make it work right, where I can mic an amplifier, get an overhead mic for my voice. I'm going to be able to do it all eventually, but again, I work a lot. You know, it's not really a question so much of getting the gear or whatever else, it's learning how to use it. I might have to tap my friend Jonathan for some knowledge because he is kind of a YouTube pro. Jonathan happens to be watching this, you know who you are. I need help, but that could probably be said to be true for many different contexts. Regardless, here I am again. I believe this would be episode, well, I guess if you don't count the review as an episode, but rather a separate thing, what would this be, episode 4? Yeah, I believe it's so. If not, I'll make sure it's labeled correctly. I'm really not a spaz, I promise. I'm just a bit flighty with so much on my plate. So without any further ado, let's talk about some things here guitar related. First off, in the news, the big story over the last couple of weeks has been something called the lava guitar. I don't have one. I'm not going to have one, but I can tell you it's kind of a space age looking acoustic of sorts with an odd port sound hole at the top, kind of a oblong oval. Some of them are made of, I believe, carbon fiber. Some are made of wood. Their whole shtick is the fact that they have an app kind of a thing built in on a digital touchscreen window on the top of the guitar. It's built right in. That'll allow you to add effects, among other things, add effects to your sound, and not just through an amplifier, but coming out of the guitar itself. Now, I don't mean through a speaker built into the guitar body. I'll be honest with you, I don't know how it works, but I've seen that many of the prominent guitar YouTube channels have gotten these various versions, you know, donated to them, or however you want to describe it, sent to them for review and to keep afterwards. And they're all raving about it. Apparently it has a built-in drum machine and a looper, and you can go online and pull up lessons, and I guess it does everything under the sun. It even has distortion, which is kind of an odd thing to have on an acoustic guitar, but hey, why not, you know, whatever floats your boat, right? But this seems to be the big thing, the lava. I've seen the lava blue and the lava, I believe it was gray, and there were a few others that were named after colors and whatnot. I don't know. It's all the same concept in different versions of the guitar at different price points. If you want something that is truly an all-in-one solution, so to speak, to your practicing needs, I'm going to say this would probably be something to look into. I kind of wish I had one to review for you, you know, or at least be able to hold up and say, here's what it looks like, but I'll see if through the magic of editing, maybe I can insert a picture. I know it's totally possible to do stuff like that. Everybody else, every other channel does it, and it's so easy. But I'm not a technophobe, but I'm a bit of a techno, how shall we say, well, I guess there is no politically correct way to say it. I'm technologically challenged, let's say. But I'll try. So that's the big news in guitar this week, the last 2 weeks in fact, the lava guitar. And I will be sure to include a link to it underneath in the show notes in case anyone wants to click on it. But all you got to do is search lava guitar and you will see a pile of videos pop up on YouTube. It's quite the popular thing at the moment. Next up, by popular demand, I'm going to do another book review. Another book review. This time around, the book is called The STRAT in the Attic by Deke Dickerson. Now, those of you in the know will already be aware that Deke is an amazing rockabilly and country guitarist. Actually, he plays all styles, really, maybe apart from metal. and he's fantastic. But also, he has a driving passion for collecting guitars, especially hard to find things, legendary items. I mean, it's the stories in this book. It's literally a collection of stories of guitars that he hunted down and found in various places. And it's a cliche to use this particular description for a book, but there were times when I couldn't put this thing down. It was gripping, and it's just a great book. I got the hardcover version. I want to say it was something in the neighborhood of $40, which seems a little expensive, but there's also a volume 2, which apparently was a very limited pressing, because last I checked, you can't get a hold of one of the second volume for less than several $100s, if you can find one at all. In fact, I looked today on Amazon, they had one available for $5.45. I have no idea who on earth is possibly paying that amount for a book, but I'm sure there's somebody. But you can still readily find the original Strat in the Attic, and I highly recommend it. It was a great book, and it's subtitled Thrilling Stories of Guitar Archaeology by Deke Dickerson. And it's just a great book. So if you want something to kill some time for you and draw you in, this would probably be the book to do it, especially if you've ever gone out and beat the bushes and hit the flea markets, the yard sales, classified ads, whatever else, looking under beds in attics, basements, trying to find that elusive guitar that you know somewhere out there. And because there are still some of them out there, it's just a fact of life. Guitars were extremely popular in the 50s and especially in the 60s, and then onward in the 70s, not so much, but they were still around. There are guitars out there, valuable guitars in some cases, in some cases just cool, not necessarily valuable. They don't always equate. Just gotta look, and no one looks like Deke Dickerson. So, I'm gonna take a moment here for a shameless plug. Those of you that aren't already aware, this is my album, Tinfoil Hat. If you'd like a copy, by all means, get a hold of me at rickenbackeranonymous@gmail.com. Give me your mailing info and whatnot, and I'll see that you get one. If you'd like to look it up, just look up Steve Rempis, R-E-M-P-I-S, on any of your better-known streaming platforms. Here on YouTube, there are, well, not really videos, but audio with that cover picture on it. An actual music video or two would be fun to make, but again, time, money. Finding someone to do it here wouldn't be all that difficult, being Nashville, but the time and the money could be an issue. It would be an issue, no doubt. But check me out. If you've got an Alexa unit, just say, Alexa, play songs by Steve Rempis. You'll mostly get selections from Tinfoil Hat. I also had a couple of songs on a compilation that was put together of songs about dogs. I have 2 songs on that. Those might come up. And even something I recorded a little over 10 years ago, right before I moved to Nashville, a country song called A Little Behind that I went to a studio for the first time and recorded. That's on there as well. By all means, give them a listen, have fun. But Tinfoil Hat, that's the main thing that I'd like you to check out, and fun little album. So, speaking of popular demand, one thing that I've been asked by several people, comments and whatnot, or direct messages, is to feature my #1 guitar. You've seen my #2, my Rickenbacker 360, the jet glow black one with the aftermarket pickups and whatnot. And I have been reticent to show my #1 because Rickenbacker themselves wouldn't appreciate it. It's a copy. And you've seen my Greco 12-string copy. That apparently had its own little legality window by the fact that it was produced, as I understand it, for Japan-only sale. But somehow some got here, obviously. But my #1 actually comes from China, which I know for a lot of people is a 4-letter word these days. But people have been asking me about it, so I might as well just tell you about it, show it to you. This is my number one. It's gone by several different names: the Green Machine, the Snot Rod, the Green Goblin, whatever you want to call it. But of all the guitars I own, and there are a lot of them, if I had one guitar to grab because the house was on fire, assuming all the family, including the animals, were already out safely, this would be the one guitar that I would grab. Is it the most valuable? Not by a long shot. Is it the most important to me? Well, to some degree, yes. I can honestly say that I love this guitar more than any other. So, let me give you a little background on this guitar. Back in the 80s and early 90s, owning a Rickenbacker was the dream, the unattainable dream, as it were. They were really expensive. I was in high school, didn't have any money, did have a Gibson Explorer that I, spent 11 months earning, but even then it was only $375, and a Rickenbacker was well over $1,000 even then, or at least in somewhere approaching $1,000. Anyway, I always had this dream that one day I'd have enough money to custom order a Rickenbacker from the Rickenbacker custom shop, which I was sure had to exist, because everybody had a custom shop, right? Well, I'd actually draw pictures of the guitars that I wanted to one day own, and one of them was basically this. And as I got into my 40s, had a decent job, and could afford to have some nice things, I decided it was time to order my custom Rickenbacker that I'd always wanted, only to find out that there was no Rickenbacker custom shop and never had been. And the only way you could get anything made to your specs is if you happen to be a famous rock star, possibly of the level of Tom Petty, and then you could ask for something specific. So I was a bit heartbroken. What I wanted, it's very specific. I wanted a rounded top 360. I wanted a 21 fret neck, because I didn't much care for the 24 fret neck's pickup spacing. It always looked wrong to me. Probably because I grew up looking at pictures of George Harrison and other 60s icons and their 21 fret Rickenbackers. So I wanted a rounded top, 21 frets. I wanted the vintage style toaster top pickups, of course. A Bigsby vibrato, and two things that were virtually unobtainable, as it turned out. One of which was a dot inlay neck, which basically would have meant that I'd have a fretboard from a Model 330 on a 360 body. There actually were a small handful of those made in the late 60s, just as test mules or something. I've seen 2 or 3 different ones. None were for sale. They were all maple glow. But this is what I wanted. I've always been partial to dots. And most importantly, I wanted green glow, which was a color that apparently was only available on a few one-offs that Rickenbacker made. You can search Rickenbacker green glow on Google, and you'll come up with a few. At least 2 of them you'll find are refins, but there are a couple of original ones. So here was my desire. This is what I wanted. I wanted all these things. I couldn't have it. Now, I agree with a lot of people's moral opposition to buying copies of Rickenbacker from China or wherever it is. And if it was a readily available model, I wouldn't. I simply wouldn't do it. But there was no way to get what I wanted from the company at any price. I was prepared to shell out $5,000 if I had to have the one guitar that I'd always wanted. Couldn't be done. And somebody suggested that I buy a 21 fret Model 360, which is going to be vintage because I don't think they really were around much past 1971, and then have the fretboard removed, have it refinished. By the time we were done, we'd be well over $5,000 for something, and in the meantime I would have destroyed a vintage guitar, which I'm totally opposed to doing. So by chance, in some of my YouTube viewing, I came across a lot of reviews for guitars that were made by a website called rareelectricguitars.com. Now I'm willing to share that address with you now because it doesn't exist anymore. It was around for quite a while, and apparently they made good quality copies of lots of things, but especially Rickenbackers. And they weren't at all like the $300 knockoffs you can buy now. They were actually made to order. And you could get whatever you wanted. And I decided to roll the dice and give it a shot, so I contacted them, told them exactly what I wanted. They told me, yes, we can do it. It'll take you at least 6 months. It'll cost you $4.99. And I'm trying to remember if the shipping was included in that or not. I don't recall. This has been 7 or 8 years ago. So I did. I sent them the money, crossed my fingers, and thought, worst case scenario, I'm going to wind up with a really cool and somewhat expensive wall hanger that'll at least have the look of the guitar I always wanted. Well, this finally did show up. It actually took 7.5 months. But throughout the process, they sent me pictures of the guitar in progress, which was cool. I've got its baby pictures and whatnot. And it showed up. It didn't look exactly like this at the time. When it first showed up, it had sort of the standard Rickenbacker looking black knobs. It had toaster top looking pickups. Had a bridge cover, of course. It had one of those, let's be honest, bad, generic, fake Bigsby's. And the pick guards were flat against each other. There was no riser between the two layers. And it showed up, and it felt pretty good. The action was actually okay. Didn't have any sharp fret ends. Of course, the neck is bound, which helped. Basically, it felt great, especially once I dialed in the action. I immediately lost the bridge cover, as I do on all my guitars, the real Rickenbackers especially. And I tried it a bit. Immediately figured out that the pickups were wired out of phase to each other, so the middle position basically didn't exist. So I set about turning that guitar into what I really wanted. The first thing I did was lost that bad Bigsby and replaced it with this hook style tailpiece. Those of you that watched the episode about my number 2 will see that I installed one of those on that as well. This is my favorite tailpiece. I think you get them for $2.95 from some site on AliExpress or on eBay, whatever. They do a great job. Put 3 screws in, you can restring in just a matter of minutes an entire set of strings, and it's great. I love it. That was the first thing I changed. And I played it like that for a while with my then band Incognito Cartel. But I wasn't real happy with the sound, especially the fact that I couldn't use the blend position. I could have rewired it, I suppose, but I didn't want to take it apart. I was a bit afraid to get in there. So some time went by, and I decided that I was going to take the leap and put in new pickups. And since I was taking it apart anyway, I went ahead and got some of those rubber grommets to put between the pick guards so it's multi-layered as it should be. And I got a set of pickups, these pickups, from my friend Tom. They're identical to pickups that I've seen for sale on Guitar Fetish, GFS, but I can't say that they are the same. We're not exactly sure where they came from. Tom doesn't remember where he got them, and of course I never knew. But my idea was I was going to install these pickups as sort of a stopgap to get their wiring correct and basically just to be in the guitar and sound better until I could afford some actual toasters to put in. And I also ordered an all-new wiring harness with full-size pots and whatnot from Guitar Fetish. I think it was $24.95. It came pre-wired. All I had to do was hook up the ground and hook up the pickups, and it was good to go. So I did all that. And that was basically it. I've been through multiple sets of knobs, everything from real Rickenbacker knobs to stereo knobs to some strange green knobs to now these are Hofner reissue teacup knobs. Who knows what'll be on it the next time I pick it up. I mean, I'm kind of liking these, but who knows. Anyway, so basically everything on this guitar except the plastic got changed. I would mention that the original tuners, which are Kluson copies, they slipped slightly when I got it, so I assumed I'd be changing those. 8 years on, I haven't touched them. They're great. It holds tune great. It goes into tune great. They don't slip anymore. I guess they just needed to break in. I don't know. But I've used this guitar on countless gigs with Incognito Cartel, with my current cover band Raygun. It's going to be used heavily on my originals band playing the music from Tinfoil Hat. It just sounds great. And unless you wonder the story on the pickups, they sounded so good that I gave up even considering putting in actual Rick toasters, because while they might look cool and look vintage, they're not going to sound better than these. These sound fantastic. All three positions sound great. Oh, and by the way, my fifth position does nothing. It's literally an unwired pot. The wiring loom that I bought from Guitar Fetish was 2 volumes and 2 tones and a switch, and that was it. So this is just here for show, basically. I didn't want to have an empty hole in my pick guard. So as I said, apart from the tuners and the nut, I've changed virtually everything on this guitar, but the important thing is it had great bones. I couldn't have done that to a junky, standard Chinese guitar like you'd get nowadays, or I'm told you get nowadays. If the bones of this guitar weren't good to begin with, I couldn't have done these things. This guitar had great bones, great finish, great construction. It does have kind of an odd construction in that if you look in the light, it's not something I can really show you for the sake of the video, but I'll just explain to you. Whereas a regular Rickenbacker, you start off with a slab, which is then carved out in a back laminated on. This is just the opposite. Apparently, these builders had no clue as to how a Rickenbacker was actually constructed. So they did literally just the opposite. They started with a block, they scooped it out from the top, and then put the top on. You can see the seam of the top piece, which you can only see it if you're really looking for it, and I honestly couldn't care less. But it's just an interesting thing to mention. In tune, of course. So this is my number one, and as I said, if I had one guitar to grab in an emergency, this would be the one. If I had 2 free hands and was headed for a desert island, it'd probably be this and my Greco 12. But certainly this. This is my number one, and I wouldn't part with it even if Ben Hall offered to make me the genuine article at this point. This guitar does everything I want it to do, and all the other guitars in this room to some degree are superfluous versus this. I would mention the feel of the neck. It feels more like a Gibson than an actual Rickenbacker, which is to say it's much more lead friendly. And yes, I know Mike Campbell plays leads on his Rickenbacker, but I got news for you. The Rickenbacker he uses to play leads on, his custom 350, he had specially made with a flatter fingerboard and slightly wider. It's not standard. So those of you who want to jump in and say, well, Tom can't, yeah, you can play lead on anything, theoretically. You can bend on a 12 string. I don't recommend it, but you can. But this guitar is very lead friendly. And I've got a piece of video of me playing with Jonathan Pushkar's band a couple of years back, where I play some pretty snappy little lead with this particular guitar. And if I can figure out how to pull it off, I might just attach it to the end of this thing and let you see for yourself this thing in action. So if I can pull that off, if I can figure out how to get the video off of YouTube, I'm going to need to call my daughter. I'll do that. So, those of you who asked, there's number one in all her glory. And by the way, yes, that headstock says Rempus Backer. I wouldn't have bought one with a fake Rickenbacker logo on it. I had them silk screen this with my name. And I love it. Now, those of you out there that want to do the same for yourself, I don't know any way you can. The current crop of Rick copies that are coming out of Japan are sub-Epiphone quality. I've played several. I even made the mistake of trying to order a model 3060 double neck, thinking how bad could it be? Well, I found out how bad it could be. Apart from being used for the inside photos on my CD, it's done nothing but sit and collect dust because it's unplayable, literally unplayable. You can't adjust the angle of the neck because it's glued in, which is, as it should be, glued in. But the bridge, it can't be lowered any farther, and the action is still unplayably high. It's useless, and it's a mistake I made and I wouldn't make again. I don't recommend anyone else try to do it either. If you want a Rick, get a Rick. You know, is there a chance you could get lucky like I did? I suppose, but it's not worth your money to try to find out. I caught lightning in a bottle. Or it could just be that rareelectricguitars.com was a great factory, but to the best of my knowledge, they're gone, or maybe they exist under a different name. Who's to say? I don't know. In any case, I've tried to find them just because, to be honest with you, I wanted to get a backup, and they're gone, long gone. They've been for a couple of years. So that's that. Well, looking at the counter here, it looks like I've been talking to you now for nearly 27 minutes, so I'd say that's probably enough for this episode. Like, comment, subscribe, ring the bell, spin around in circles and scream my name, whatever you feel like doing. Tell a friend, tell an enemy, go tell it on the mountain. I've used that joke before. Rock on, chime on, wail on. Oh, it killed me. And you may want to at this point as well. So join me next time when we talk about, well, to be honest, I have no idea. Hopefully you'll have some suggestions that you can put down below in the comments and tell me what you want to see next. I've got a lot of guitars here. If there's some particular kind of guitar you'd like to see, there's a good chance I might happen to have one. You'd be surprised. Let me know. Or if you see something in the room, you know, when I'm moving the camera around, you can ask. Whatever the case is, if there's a book you'd like to see reviewed, I may well have it. I've got a heck of a large library of guitar books. If there's a product you want to see reviewed, there's always a chance that I can get a hold of one. Borrow one, buy one. I won't steal one, but anything up to that, maybe. Let me know. So, until next time, as I said, stay cool, stay frosty. Is that what the kids say these days? I think that's what the kids said back in the 90s. What do I know? Chime on, rock on, stay cool, and I'll see you next time.